is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line? Address it to a Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis, or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized. And when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. But we encourage you always to be forceful with your point. Again, thank you all for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. Also, you can follow our live stream on Facebook at Vaughan Radio and our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio. Tonight, Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts, and more particularly, the people of Nevis. Those who listen to us on the World Wide Web, YouTube and Facebook. Webbo, this evening I'm glad to be here, and as usual, it's an obligation for me to be here. Webbo.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and a very pleasant good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to our listeners and viewers of this edition of Let's Talk. I want to take this opportunity to offer condolences to all those families who are in mourning tonight, whether they are here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis or with their loved ones overseas. Certainly want to offer them my condolences on the passing of whether it's a family member, a colleague, or just a loved one. To those who are celebrating tonight, whether it's a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or some accomplishment in their life, certainly want to wish them a wonderful evening, and I hope that they have had a wonderful day as they celebrate. To those persons who are in our various hospitals here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and to those who are seeking medical attention overseas, certainly hope that they would be well with the advent of divine intervention, with the help of our nurses and doctors and the other healthcare professionals as they seek to nurse them back to good health. Webbo, I want to thank you for this invitation, and I certainly am looking forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences. And if I may, I would just like to extend good evening greetings to my cousin in St. Kitts, my nephew in the USA, and my uncle in the USVI, my husband in London.
So what we got?
Well, I want to take this opportunity to offer some congratulatory greetings. On Saturday evening, the Charlestown Primary School would have celebrated their 30th anniversary at their present location. And I want to take this opportunity to certainly offer the principal and staff and all the past and present students, all the parents, and all those supporters of the Charlestown Primary School 30th anniversary congratulations. I believe that the Charlestown Primary School have been certainly a trendsetter here on the island of Nevis for many years. And I remember very vividly when that facility was being constructed. I happened to work with the architect at the time when that school was constructed. And I also remember at the opening, I think it was our former premier and national hero, Dr. Daniel, would have made the point that there was a government on the island of Nevis that had the interests of the people of Nevis at heart. And I believe that he was sending that message because there was some Canadian high officials who were there. And he was trying to beckon to them that whenever they come to the Federation, that they must also come to Nevis. I think that's the point that he was trying to make. And I think that over the 30 years we have seen the Charlestown Primary School contributing in all facets of life here, in sports, in the field of education. A lot of our young people would have gone on to achieve great things here in the island of Nevis and in the Federation and further afield. And I just wanted to lend my voice as they celebrate its 30th anniversary. It has been a long journey for the Charlestown Primary School, and I think that they would have been one of the leaders in many areas. I know that things like the school feeding program, their sporting achievement, their educational exploits, and I believe that they have been a good steward of the investment in that facility. And I want to congratulate the principal, the staff, the deputy principal, and everyone who is associated with that school, the parents, past and present, and I certainly want to wish them continued success in the future, because I still believe that there are great things still ahead for the Charlestown Primary School.
Webbo, I would like to join Mr. Brand in extending congratulations to the Charlestown Primary School, a school that has been featured particularly in the sports arena, and of course they've held their own in academics as well. Just one issue though that came to mind is that I was just wondering if Mr. Brand would have any update on, I think there was some kind of reconciliation that ought to have been done with respect to when the school was open, because I remember my cousin Ash having an issue in that the school was claiming to be open after he would have already started school there, and so he had some issues with his transcripts, trying to sell himself in terms of trying to apply for a job, but there was a discrepancy between when he said he went to school and when the school claimed that they were open. So I was just wondering if there was any update in terms of reconciliation of that issue, because I did promise him I was going to ask you about that.
No, I don't have any update. I know that Ash would have raised that matter. I know I would have raised it also with the PS of Education and also with the Minister of Education. I believe that one of the issue is that on the I would say that the emblem of the Charlestown Primary School, I think it said established 1992. And there is the argument that there are persons who would have received certificate and graduated prior to 1992 with a certificate stating Charlestown Primary School. So I know that has been an ongoing matter that need to be resolved, and I am fully aware of it. Ash would have reached out to me as well. And I would have raised it with the education official, Minister of Education, PS of Education. That is a matter that I think that they just need to make a decision on, so to speak, and bring to some resolution, because it is a concern. I think that Charlestown Primary School, going into Charlestown Primary School in its present form, would have had the Charlestown Infant and Charlestown Junior. So there was a genesis, so to speak, of getting to the Charlestown Primary School. And I believe that is something that the education officials definitely need to, one way or the other, bring some resolution to. But personally, I don't have any update on it, Dr. Bartley, to answer your question directly.
Thank
Well,
you.
based on that, let me just get my 2 cents in on that. Normally, when you build a building, somewhere in the mortar or the concrete, you would actually write a date in terms of completion and date of beginning, and thus it gives your timetable a time frame to which you could revert and ultimately bring accuracy to what transpired at that time, the beginning, and as to where it is now. So I don't understand how we as a citizenry could allow something to be going on without accurate information. However, we are fallible as mankind, and mistakes do make, and consequently we are here. But at the same time, something should have been done about it. Not now, but at the same time. And ultimately, we will get a resolution to that matter.
Well, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but one would have thought that, the matter was an urgent enough matter, because it would, affect people who are seeking employment. If you're going to write on your resume that you went to a school and then it seems as if the school never existed when you claim that it would have existed, that is cause for concern. And I think that the matter probably should by now have been resolved. And maybe, I don't know who higher up the ladder could intervene at this point in time, because it has apparently been sitting for quite a bit, because I've been, made aware of this over a year now, so it means that the matter could have been resolved by now. I don't understand why sometimes we just kick the can down the road, because it is not affecting us. But there are indeed students who would have matriculated at that school who would be, negatively impacted if they were to put information on their resume that does not or could not be verified by an official. And that, I think, is a rolling issue that ought to come to some resolution soonest. That's just my view.
All right, well, let me bring to the fore the matter of the Constitution. It's a document that has been brought about by the learned people within our society. And as a country going into independence, the learned people saw fit, right and proper, to bring about it in 1983. As a result, it is the guiding document. It is the highest law of the land, and we must be guided by what the framers inscribed in it. It is subject to interpretation, different interpretation, and as a result, we at our current existence can apply our own interpretation as laypersons, as learned persons, but at the same time, the court has a certain degree of jurisdiction over its interpretation, and those people who are at the highest level of the court, whether regional or international, meaning the Privy Council, they would interpret based on what they thought the framers had in mind when the Constitution was written, and consequently they would hand down a ruling based on the arguments proposed or posed by opposing sides. I would leave it there.
Well, Mr. Stanley, the Constitution, is it that the Constitution is a flawed Constitution, or is it that persons who are charged with the responsibility of interpreting and fulfilling the mandate of the Constitution and executing the Constitution oftentimes interpret it in a way that they think it should be interpreted and not necessarily how it should be interpreted? I think oftentimes we read something and we often here in St. Kitts and Nevis profess that we have a very high level of intelligence, and it often baffles me that
at one point when certain persons are in certain position, that they interpret the same thing differently when they're in another position. And I am not sure if we were to amend the Constitution next month or next week, that some of the issues and challenges that we are facing today, that we still wouldn't be facing them because persons would interpret them a particular way.
In the interest of time, you know, most of the time people talk about the Constitution flawed.
Yeah.
You know it is a red herring.
Well,
You know that. Huh? And when I say you, I don't mean personal, Mr. Brand.
No, I understand what you mean.
So, and that is why I prefaced it by saying in the interest of time, because it is a, what Edric call it, is a tactical move to kill time now.
To kill time now?
Yeah. Well, because if I were to put a question to you and ask you which section of the Constitution is flawed and what ought to have been there instead, I submit to you, you will not be able to answer. You probably will tell me you need some time. Am I wrong?
I think you're correct.
Okay, so then we have anything else to go on to?
Well, let me just bring a short case in point, Webbo, and we will move on. I do not know if it was an obvious omission, but at the same time, Nevis was given clause 113, and Simkits was not given a clause of the same kind, same interpretation. I do not know if it had been done deliberately or just to give Nevis the extra edge. But if you have two children and you have property to divide or assets to divide, it's only fair, right, legal and proper for you to come up with a division where one child gets X, one child gets Y, as the case might be. In this case, in this particular case, Simkits was supposed to have been given a clause that would permit it, that if it is ready to go,
To secede?
to secede, but they weren't given that clause. The people of Simkits were not given that clause, and therefore, because it was adopted, I coined the phrase, and it's only my phrase. It is constitutionally unconstitutional, simply because it was adopted, but it obviously was a blatant omission without giving Simkits the same right that Nevis was given. I'll leave it there.
Okay, so what else we got?
We are looking at this new election, and I am baffled by the number of candidates that supposedly would be brought to the fore to vie for the 11 positions at the federal level. We are at a particular crossroads, and elections are near constitutionally, and therefore the number of candidates coming from the various parties. You have 3 established parties in St. Kitts: the Labour Party, the PLP, and the PAM. You have 2 established parties, and one maybe, I'm not sure if they have done their paperwork in terms of getting the legalese. But you've got the CCM and we've got the NRP. Where we are aware of the 3 candidates for the CCM party. Do we know who the 3 candidates are for the NRP? Or there is still some toss about as to who is going to represent whether the current election or these who are now known would be for the local election. It is important for us as voters to know who the candidates are and for what they are vying. The was it moral majority, MRM,
Moral restoration.
Moral. Now, based on what I'm hearing on the ground, that they're out there campaigning, those people who were on the radio, 2 at least, came forward and declared that they are candidates for the NRM. So we know 3 for the local elections, 3, 4, maybe 5. Mrs. Simmons, who is the current representative for the House of Assembly. We know Dr. Bartlett is running for the NRP. She has declared. We know that the lady from Charlestown, can't think of her name right now, but she is running in Charlestown. But based on information reaching my desk, I understood that they now want to run for the federal, but they have gotten a constitution which precludes them from vying for the 2 positions. And based on the information that I received, I do not know what decision has been made with reference to who is running for what and when. Well, Dr. Bartlett is here, and maybe she can shed some light on those who are running and for what. The CCM has declared what they are vying for at this particular juncture. We don't have clarity on the side of the NRP as to who's running for what and when. Webbo.
Well, if I may just add a little clarity to your confusion, Mr. Stanley. You made reference to the constitution of the NRP. Do you have a copy of it by any chance?
No.
Which section are you making reference to that precludes the candidates from running for both elections? Which section is it?
I don't know which section it is.
Oh, so you read it, and you read it.
Briefly, somebody gave me a copy. I don't even know where the copy is.
Okay, so it's fair to say that you read it, but you don't remember what you read.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair to. Yeah. So let me just add a little clarity to the situation. In the NRP, the constitution which we have, it is not a constitution for St. Kitts Nevis. It is a party constitution, and in it, we make amendments according to the needs of the party. We set about reconstructing or going on a path of a rejuvenation, so to speak, of the NRP a year ago. And we were all set and geared up for a local election. Even Mr. Brand had high expectations and anticipation, because I heard him saying he was ready to beat up on somebody. And then here comes this federal election just thrusted upon us. Now we recognize, talking to the people on the ground, our constituents, that they did not necessarily want us to go the way that CCM was going by just recycling the same candidates for local as well as for the federal. So we would have had a fresh slate of candidates to field for the local election. Here comes this federal election. We tried to see if in the short period of time and the circumstances that were presented to us, if we could find alternative candidates, new, fresh candidates to put forward. However, because of the circumstances, we just could not find anyone who was willing or able at this point in time. So we have advanced the names of 3 of our candidates who we were preparing for the local elections, but they were the most prepared to go into battle for this election. Now we are going to contest one election at a time. And if we need to make amendments to our constitution in order to facilitate the circumstances in which we find ourselves, then we will do so. But we are going to contest one election at a time. What I can tell you though, I'm not speaking on behalf of the party, this statement that I'm just going to make. If I were to win the federal election and the local election came shortly thereafter, I would make myself available to run. And if I were to be offered a position in the federal cabinet or the St. Kitts cabinet, I would not accept it with a portfolio, because my focus would be on Nevis's administration. If I were to be offered a second salary, because I have been always strong against people taking 2 salaries, because I didn't think it was fair and I didn't think that it was ethical for anybody to claim 2 salaries for work being done in the same day, because I don't see you applying yourself for 16 hours in that day to claim 2 salaries. So if I were to be offered a seat in cabinet and offered a salary, my salary would go towards at least 20 of the constituents who I'm representing, to make sure that their lives are better. I would never take a cent of that money on principle, because I think it is wrong. I think it is unethical. And so that is my position. As to the official position of the party, that would come, but that is the way I see it. There is nothing whatsoever in the constitution as stated, and I don't have it with me because I didn't expect that we'll be getting into all business here. But there's nothing in there to preclude anyone from running twice. If you hold position in the provision that was made in as it related to that, if you hold a position in one parliament or in one house, it's suggested that you should not be a candidate to hold position in a second. So the only person that would apply to, as it is now, would be Mrs. Simmons, who you already would have made reference to. She's the only one who has a seat. No one else on the ticket, neither for federal nor local, has a seat, so it wouldn't apply to them. And we always reserve the right, in any circumstance, to change the constitution, to amend it according to what the current situation is. Likewise, we can make amendments to the constitution of St. Kitts and Nevis as well. Because I remember last week we had that debate, or at least a peripheral debate as it related to that. Some people thought that it was too difficult to get things done because you had to do this and you had to do that in response to a point that I would have made in terms of us making an amendment to the constitution to facilitate the fair share argument that has been bandied about. So that is where it stands now. But like I said, we are going to contest one election at a time, and if we need to modify our constitution because of the circumstances, because we do not have time, obviously we do not have time in 1 year. I mean, it's not in 1 year, in less than 1 year. As a matter of fact, it's probably about 7 months left now to be able to get a fresh slate of candidates for the local as well as a fresh slate of candidates for the federal. So that is where it stands.
Well, we are at the threshold of federal elections here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And the Concerned Citizen Movement Party has a very simple philosophy when it comes around election. Very simple. Very, very simple. And the philosophy is the Concerned Citizens Movement Party will run the candidate or the best candidate that they feel would be able to deliver victory at the polls, whether in a federal election or in a local election. This red herring about double salary, and I believe that that is going to be something that they're that we intend to wrap around the NRP neck in this campaign, but we'll get to that. This red herring about double salary. I want the people of St. Kitts and Nevis to recognize that I'm going to call a name, Mark Brantley, the Premier of Nevis and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mark Brantley has been the Premier of Nevis for 4 years, going on 4 years, going on 5 years, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs from since 2015 until a couple of weeks ago. What has been the transformation in St. Kitts and Nevis when it comes to foreign affairs and the administration and the development of our image abroad? What it is has the Honorable Mark Brantley done for St. Kitts and Nevis as it relates to his portfolio as Minister of Foreign Affairs and as Premier of Nevis? Talk about two salary, talk about two, can't do two jobs at the same time. It is amazing that there are some people who have an 8 to 4 job and they still have their private business otherwise separate and apart from their 8 to 4 job. That's 2 jobs. You're doing 2 jobs. You perform your 8 to 4 function and then you perform your private duty. I don't see anything wrong with that. You know, I think that if we are to be honest, that was simply a red herring, and it was a red herring, it is a red herring, and it will be a red herring. I want the people of Nevis to understand what this election is all about, because a lot of cataflam is going to come in this election. I want the people of Nevis in particular to understand what this federal election is all about. And the system is not going to get into too much rah-rah about this federal election. Our argument is very simple. Our argument is that it is time that the people of Nevis receive their fair share when it comes to the revenue of the CBI proceeds. That is our argument in these federal elections. Some people may ask, well, what it is that we are making noise for when it comes to this fair share? The island of Nevis is seeking its fair share to develop the island of Nevis. We have the stadium at the Mondo Track to complete. We have the hospital project to complete. We have port development, road development, community projects development, you name it, right? And the
it seems to me that there are some people who have an issue with the CCM saying that that is the issue in this federal election. Our issue is we are demanding our fair share for the people of Nevis. It is long time. And this argument about 2 jobs and 2 salaries, that is a red herring. Because I am certain that the evidence is clear that the CCM representatives who have been in the federal parliament, some have been in the federal parliament for the last 2 years. Eric Evelyn took up the portfolio of Minister of Environment and have begun to revolutionize that portfolio when it comes to environmental issues. And Minister Jeffers was charged with the responsibility of agriculture in St. Kitts. That again has been bearing significant fruits, and he has been performing in Nevis. All 3 of our CCM representatives at the federal level have been performing here in Nevis and have been performing at the federal level. I don't understand this notion that they can't do 2 jobs. Well, I think that sometimes when we make statement that we ought to at least look sometimes at what exactly we are saying, because I know that that argument is going to be a red herring for the NRP, because Dr. Bartlett would have outlined the NRP position as it regards to can't find candidate and so on, but that is NRP problem, NRP business. I'm not going to get into NRP business, but I'm saying that they are going to solve their in-house issues and challenges that they are facing. But the CCM position is, and we have always taken this position, not just now, that we will run the best candidate that we feel would be able to deliver the victory at the polls. And whether it's a local election or a federal election, that's our position. And that will be our position going into the next 2 elections at least, and maybe even longer than that. We feel that it is not a matter of changing horse because we feel that we need to change a horse. It is a matter that we would run the person that we feel, and based on our analysis, would be able to deliver the victory for the people of Nevis. And like I said again, the main issue in this campaign is what is in the best interest for the people of Nevis.
Well, let me just say this and ask Dr. Bartlett a question. Do you feel, Dr. Bartlett, if it is a question of 2 jobs, 2 salaries, that if we are able to reform the Constitution, we make specific mention of the 2 jobs, 2 salaries, 2 different persons? I'm talking about an amendment if we go down the road to amend the current 1983 constitutional order.
It's not that serious. It's not that serious, Tari. Do not take it to that level. Like Mr. Gunn said, if you think that is your best candidate, the electorate, let them decide. So, yeah, having said that, I agree with you, Mr. Brown, you run your best candidate. I don't know what ammunition you think you have to be able to wrap anything around, NRP's neck. But anyway, we'll deal with whatever ammunition you have at the time, because you have your ammunition, people have the armor. Anyway, let us just address a few of the things that you said. You said that your party representatives have been able to deliver victory for the people of Nevis. I beg to differ. I agree with you that you have been able to deliver victory for CCM, but I do not agree with you that you have been able to deliver victory for Nevis. You started off this venture claiming that your intention was to get fair share for Nevis. 7 years into it, and you have still not delivered. I don't know how much more time you want, but maybe when you go to the electorate, you can then explain to them what your failings have been and why you think that this time around you could deliver after you could not deliver in 7 years. as it relates to the performance of your highly decorated premier, as it relates to the foreign affairs, I am not going to even go there, because it is all well and good to go to St. Kitts and perform on the big stage and do what you do for St. Kitts Nevis. At the end of the day, the premiership has suffered in Nevis. At the end of the day, St. Kitts Nevis might be better off, but I'm not willing to accept that progress in St. Kitts is progress in Nevis. And that is what has been fed to us. The Premier has failed in his attempt to do both jobs. And he ought to come to the realization that he has not served the people of Nevis well. Had he put more emphasis and focus on the issues and the administration of Nevis, then we would not be in the predicament we're in. And you made reference to the hospital. The hospital has to be completed. Who is asleep? Is the Premier asleep? Are the ministers, the other ministers asleep? The hospital was started since 2017. We're in 2022. Come on, how much more time do you need? How much more time do we need to get this thing completed? Let us know when it's going to be completed. And let us know how much more monies we have to put into it. Because we said that it was going to be completed with $18 million or 19 or whatever it is. And we have already exhausted that.
That is
when is the hospital going to be completed?
That is the
thing will start by the morning.
Thing from the truth, Dr.
Start by the morning, you can't come with the evening. It was bad in design. And we're recognizing that now. And so when you all take out your sledgehammers, each one of you as the minister should be up there using the sledgehammers to break it down, to get it right. We have spent too much money and too much time in that hospital. And had the Premier been focusing on Nevis, maybe, just maybe, we might have been able to get the hospital right. Maybe, just maybe, we might have been able to get the Mondo track right. And all the other projects that lie around not being completed. And all the waste that has happened. When you go next to the hospital, there's a frame building there on the ground. For years now, rusting. Huh? That is not good service to the people of Nevis. That is not acting in the best interest of the people of Nevis. A frame sitting down there, I had a contractor friend, I asked, how much you think that thing is, has cost Nevis? He estimates that it could be about $3 million. That is his estimate. If you have something, if you have the actual amount, then let us know how much it is costing us. But that is waste. You go down to Pennies, a similar building down there, a steel frame on the ground. For years now, rusting. Another $3 million there. Huh? You go over to Bart Plain, there's a building, the thing that you said was supposed to be the cemetery. I mean, nothing has happened there. Another $3 million there. Waste. Had the Premier been focusing on the issues related to Nevis, then we would not be in this predicament. In the height of this economic crisis that we are facing, people in St. Kitts could enjoy a 10%. Nevis people have to sit down with 5%. What is 5%? What is 5% to someone who is making $260 a week? Huh? You give them an extra $15, what could that buy? Can't buy nothing. Cannot make a difference. Those are the issues that ought to be addressed. Don't tell me that you go and get passports go and sell anyway. People who want passport, you think is more places they want to go? No. It's not more places they want to go. So whether you send me or you send Stanley or whomever, passports go sell. Because people are catching on to the point that they could get a golden passport. As a matter of fact, people are getting it even cheaper. Just come to Nevis and marry somebody else. So when in St. Kitts, they're collecting thousands of dollars for passport. We over here giving them away for votes. Huh? So don't tell me that we have been served better by the Premier holding 2 jobs, because that's it, far from the truth. That has not been borne out, and we are here to see it. Let the people who are overseas, you sell that to them, because they're not here. They're not experiencing the hardships that Nevisians are facing. I mean, every day, people know that I run a little program there with women, single women especially, with children. I try to help out with little food. I'm not a rich woman, never been, but I try to help. And every week, I'm getting more and more calls. I'm getting more and more people are reaching out. They need help. Those are the issues we need addressed. not how many passport we're selling. If you're selling so much passport and you're not getting your fair share, what are you selling passport for? Stop sell passport. Come back to Nevis and do the work that you're being commissioned to do by the Nevisians. Nevisians and send you St. Kitts to sell a passport. You go and go to St. Kitts sell passport and you still can't get your fair share. You still can't take the time out to figure out a way that you could get your fair share. Then you're ineffective.
Well,
Before you get to that, Mr. Brown.
yes.
I was listening to the discussion earlier on, and I just made a notation here to ask a question of the panel. As I heard the varied arguments, a general question. Last week, I had some young folks on the first segment of the program. And one of them made an interesting point, and we had a brief discussion on it, as to candidates and whether or not the credibility of the candidate is of importance to the electorate, and whether or not their personal achievements, etc., is fair game in an election, or always. And I think that all and sundry agreed that it is. So let me go around the table and ask the same question, whether credibility is of the essence in this regard. Edric.
Credibility is paramount.
Brand.
Yes, Webbo, credibility is the bedrock of who you are and what you are.
Dr. Bartlett.
I endorse everything that has been said that relates to credibility.
All right, so let me ask this. If a person were making their case, and they were to say, let's say I'm making my case trying to persuade Edric to work with me, and I said to Edric, if you work with me, I wish that you would work with me because these are the principles on which I stand. A, B, and C. And he resists, and I keep working. And because I can work well, he eventually succumbs, and so I get in. And then I find that I have to change my mind. And then I said, you know, Mr. Stanley, sorry, but I have to change my mind. Nothing is wrong with that. But I think Mr. Stanley might be disappointed. And does he have a right to? Mr. Brand.
Yes, Webbo, I think oftentimes persons may change their mind based on certain issues and based on certain revelation that may come to light while you may have taken a particular position. But I think that when you would have tried to persuade me that this is your position, and you would have led me to believe that this is your position, and have enticed me, so to speak, to rally with you based on your position, and then you change your mind, of course I have a right to be disappointed, and I have a right to take a particular stance based on you changing your mind. It's all about human nature.
Right, so nothing is wrong with that, but you should I should give you the luxury of feeling hurt or bad about it, right? Now the second part is this: is it fair that I understand then if you think that all along from the beginning it was strategic and it was deception?
You must always keep that to the back of your mind as a possibility.
Dr. Bartlett, what do you think?
Well, I don't know that I necessarily understand the dynamics going on, But I understand where you're going with this, and yeah, I agree with you that when people change their mind, sometimes they have to convince you of at least for me, if someone were to say something to me and had to change their mind, they had to give me a good reason why they would want to change their mind, and I'm willing to work with them. Yes.
All right, and then the second part, it is understandably, if they also think that it's not so much a circumstance change and you change your mind, but it could be that it was deception and deceit from the beginning.
Well, if you're that cynical, yes. But you're entitled to, that's your prerogative. If you're a cynical person, yes.
But if you're not cynical, you must believe that the person did not set out to deceive.
Well, that's why I think people sometimes would end up voting for the same people because they come back and give them some fancy stories. But yes, it happens. Yes.
Edric, what do you think?
Well, I believe once you engage me, or engage anybody for that matter, to convince them to come along or to work with you, you obviously would have put some skin in the game for them to actually work with you. But if you change your mind for whatever reason, the person has to drill down to truly determine whether you set out to be deceptive or you're genuinely sorry for whatever happened. Circumstances changed, and as a result, you've changed your mind. But usually, if it took you some time to convince me to work with you, it must take me some time to drill down to figure out exactly why you change your mind. And somewhere between those two positions, the truth is there. And if one is astute enough, they will ask the right question and they'll be able to get the answers and determine as to whether or not it was a BS.
Sure.
You think we have a lot of that going on?
Oh, man. I could remember one time you mentioned to me when somebody gave you a bluff. They believe they have just put $1 million in the bank, and I have proven it. I have proven it. And I get this often. Even my children will tell me, Daddy, why you allow people? I said, I have the capacity to cut people a lot of slack. And when they boot their head, they think they got me. I just pass them smiling. Happens all the time. I mean, I could bring you many cases in point. I had to write a letter to tell a person, this is the third time I'm putting in this request.
Mr. Stanley, let's see if this person wants to have a discussion with us. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Herbert, and to everyone else.
Good evening.
Yes, Ms. Bartlett, what do you think about after so many years of independence that we not have freedom of information, integrity in public life, financial, legislation, so that the citizens could be aware of what's going on? We have government for the people.
Caller, before, can I just
Yes,
point something out? Did you say integrity in public life?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean we don't have it?
Legislation.
We do have.
We do have.
So I just work with me. By way of information, I just wanted you to know that, because I know sometimes I normally say around election time there's certain phrases that are just made, So I just wanted, yes.
But if we have, what is it? What's going on in this federation?
Yeah, but the point.
Have you been listening to the elected officials?
Yeah, work with me. what I'm saying was, I wanted to continue what you were saying, but I just thought you mentioned a few things, and you mentioned that, so I just wanted you to know that that is there already.
But if it is there, Mr. Herbert, it's not working, because this is what I started a few weeks ago. People's life should show integrity.
Right, but okay, since you want to continue on that, you would agree that there are a lot of things that we have that after we discover that we have them, the issue is whether or not they have been used or implemented. You agree with that?
That is what I'm talking about.
Right. So the issue is not whether or not we have them, because we always making noise, oh, we want this, and then we have it. So that's not the problem, you know. You agree with that?
Yes. You see, where I put the statement started that way was to get this same point where you're bringing out. Because we keep hearing about leaking information and stuff like that. And you remember the swearing-in ceremony, because your station broadcasted it live. Politicians swear not to do certain things with the Bible in their hand. So what are you telling me now? These politicians, their Bible got a dust, so not even their fingerprint could show on the Bible and the dust,
Okay.
so that these information could be coming forth like this?
Right, but you also would appreciate and understand that you may ask for certain legislation to be put in place, and the politicians or whoever do it, right?
Yes.
You will also appreciate, or do you want those same politicians to be the ones who execute it?
Yes.
Oh, really? So you are going to work with me. So you are going to trust them to make the law and work it as well?
It's not trusting them to work it. I'm hoping that these gentlemen and lady, whoever, would apply it to their life.
Yeah, but why not do what they normally do? They make the law, and there are different officers and different persons who enforce them. Why would you want to have them make the law, enforce it and everything? Why would you want to do that?
No, not enforce it, apply it to their own life.
No, but what I'm saying is, if the law is made,
Yes.
can you fault them? Their job was to make the law. And then there are other persons who have to do other things where the law is concerned. You get that?
Yes, but they are the one in authority to show an example of the law that they produce. You can't make a baby and then go around saying, that's not my child.
You know something, caller, that could be part of our problem, right?
Yes.
Because it's just like there are certain people who have nothing to do with something, but because somebody don't like them, they just keep blaming them.
No, it's not blaming.
No, because what I'm trying to say to you is this: that the thing is done. I have done my part, and Mr. Stanley is supposed to do his, but you still keep blaming me for Mr. Stanley's part.
Yeah,
But maybe because, work with me, maybe because you like Mr. Stanley, but let's look at the thing objectively.
No, it's not nothing to do with liking. Okay, let's take, for instance, let's forget about those in power now. Let's put 5 new children at 5 years old to be in government. Do we expect them to carry on themselves the same way like these are having now? Getting on radio and slandering each other and stuff like that? And then the children will say, the adults did it, so why can't we? You know, that's the way I'm trying to approach it. We're trying to get new leaders. But if the old ones carrying on that way, then they have educated the young ones. So what do we expect in the future? This is what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get people to change their ways. If the leaders change their ways, the country will change. But the leaders can't continue in this way. And I could just sit back and say, they're nice. No. It doesn't need a law for someone to know it within themselves that they are wrong. This is something that we are born with. We are not monkeys. We are human beings. What I'm hoping for, we are expecting better from people with their personal life. It's not just being in government and trying to get money from things that are building a road. Your personal life should count something to you. And then that would make it much better for us. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. You know, life is interesting. A very learned gentleman told me today. He said to me, you know, Webbo, you and I, sometimes we do a tag team thing. Sometimes we work together on certain things. And he says to me, you know, sometimes, hypothetically, Edric will hear me, but he will listen you. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good night, Mr. Webbo.
Yes.
Twilight calling me. I want to tell Pat is Timothy decide who to run for the federal election in Nevis for NRP, and tell she that he gonna lose worse than Daly. But she not she gonna lose worse than Daly. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a particular intervention for Dr. Bartlett, meaning the hospital, which, based on the timetable, I do not know if you are aware that there are times you have cost overrun simply because of changes based on new technology, additions, as the case might be.
Let me just take this, Mr. Stanley. I'll come back to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello, good evening. Let me just say, we don't want nobody else but the Freeman them to vote in Gingerland. Just the Freeman alone, we want to go to the poll. And then, I don't know what next.
Good evening. Thank you for holding. Good evening. Good evening.
Mr. Webbo. Good evening to your panel. Very interesting what's going on in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Webbo, can somebody tell us a good reason why are we having an election on the 5 years? A lot of us don't want to deal with the issue at time, you know. A lot of us being affected, we've been treated like animals, we've been knocked about, we've been doing everything to us. And all of a sudden, these people coming back to tell us, put them back in Parliament. Everybody think it's crazy. Everybody think it's stupid, Mr. Webbo.
Caller, before you go on, let me just let you know, right?
Yeah.
I made a bulletin the other day, and I have said that in terms of the adjectives we use when we're describing people, we're going to be very careful with them. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Because if you use certain adjectives, we won't accept it. Okay?
I understand what you said.
Okay, good. I just want to, you know that the way I play with the rules first.
I got you, Mr. Webbo.
And once you work with the rules, I work with you.
No problem, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Webbo.
Yes, go ahead.
We were knocked about during this whole last 7 years. We were even knocked about more during the pandemic. And nobody seemed to was listening. Nobody seemed that they were the key, the politicians. Now today, you're telling me, before these people come to the nation and apologize, ask for forgiveness for the last 7 years, including especially the last 2 years during this pandemic, the way people have been treated. They just come in to tell us, vote for them. One man just come in to tell them about who free share and money. But nobody's speaking about the TDC staff who have not got their 7th money. Nobody looking forward to the lady who work TDC, who took the vaccine. Mr. Webbo is home presently now.
Yeah, but listen, caller, listen to me, right? We've dealt with those same couple of issues here for months and years, right? You agree with that?
Yeah.
And you keep, why don't we try a different forum?
But Mr. Webbo, Mark Brandon,
Yeah, but the same, you remember we had an agreement, you and I?
yeah, but
Walk with me, man. You remember you and I had an agreement about Mark Bentley?
yes.
Okay, so let's stick to that agreement, okay?
Yeah, but
You're gonna break the agreement.
I'm moving on.
Oh, you're moving on. Okay, go ahead.
All I'm saying is that these people coming back to ask us to elect them back in Parliament. Before we get to electing them, every single one of them need to tell the people at the Federation of Simplicity what went wrong, and each one of them need to be investigated inside out.
But let me ask you this. You don't think, in an effort to get the answer that you're just talking about, when you hear those same persons, because I know they're normally in talk shows like this and you have the opportunity to call in, you don't think that you can ask them the same question?
Well, I've been asking the same question for years, and I'm not getting asked, and I call Mark as a clown.
So you figure, walk with me. So you figure it's now time for a light moment.
Well, if you want to call it a light moment,
So he told you, walk with me. He told you he's a clown?
that's what he said.
And you believe him? Huh?
Huh?
He told you that you're a clown?
You keep saying that?
And do you believe him?
That is disrespectful of our
No, walk with. He told you you're a clown.
Yeah.
Do you believe him?
You're a clown?
You're not a clown.
No.
And you told him that?
I can't really tell him that you're not listening.
Okay, well, maybe you can call back. Let me get another call, okay?
No problem, Mr.
Okay.
But it's not
All right,
okay?
have a good evening.
It's not a joke.
No, this is not no clowning around. Good evening, thank you for good evening, thank you for holding.
Hey, Webber.
Yes.
Curtis, right?
No, nobody called identify themselves as that, so walk with me.
No, okay. You call or just call, right?
Yes.
Mark wants to never tell he ain't a clown. He call and tell Mark one thing, a kind of foolish thing about it's how we feel like get fired and stuff. Tell he right, okay, you listen anyway, you know what to tell him. Anything he want to find out about why we at this junction, why we at the junction election, tell him to go and ask Denzel Douglas. He went over Kean and Timothy Harris in a church. In a church, you know. He went over, they go protest. More police with gun and
yeah, okay, but see what we're not gonna do though. I don't think we're gonna do any back and forth on him and stuff like that.
No, me not really with the back and forth. It's just to tell he, you know, because them let us take up time when they call in and all of them things. Just tell him to go and ask. Well, you can hear me. Go and ask Denzel Douglas. Me not tell him to call back, but that's how he is. When somebody says something, he call back. But I only want to tell him, go to ask Denzel Douglas why you get election here, why you get fired up PDC. Don't come and the Webbo station go talk about this and that and Mark. Mark never call you no clown. I listen to the
Mark told you he's not a clown?
Oh, Mark?
Yeah. You said Mark never called Mark told you he's not a clown?
No clown, but Mark never tell he was being clown.
Or Mark never told him that?
Mark never told him that.
What did Mark tell him?
No, Mark never told him he's a clown.
So how did he conclude that Mark think he's a clown?
I don't know.
Okay.
So that's what I tell you. He just make it up and then anything.
So he just...
I know last Wednesday when he called in 3 times. He even put a girl to call in, maybe a girlfriend, and say, Mark a fight for money and he greedy.
Okay, that's
hang up.
That's the light part for tonight, okay?
Alright.
So you said Mark didn't say he's a clown?
He never said it.
Okay. Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Webbo, good night. I have a question for Mr. Brandt. I listened to him explaining that a business person can have a business and they can work that business or have work in that business and still be employed elsewhere. So his argument is that they can work 2 jobs, right? But it's not going to happen at the same time. My question for him is that he is an architect and he does drawings and he does building inspections or evaluations for persons. When he has to draw and he has to do the evaluation, does he go on his job at the Nevis Island administration for a day or 2 to get that done and then come back afterwards? Or does he do that after he is finished with the job at the Nevis Island administration? That is my question to him, and I would like him to answer it for me, because what he's saying is deceiving person. It's not correct.
And thank you for your question. I have not done any architectural drawings or property valuation for Brands Architectural Services since I've become an elected member of the Nevis Island administration. I resigned from doing those things at Brands Architectural Services. Brands Architectural Services is managed, run and operated by a competent and capable manager who is more than capable and competent in doing these things. So I don't bother myself with those things. My focus on a day-to-day basis is for my constituency and for the people of Nevis. So I don't get involved in those things, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Brand, thank you. You answered my question well, because it clearly tells the people of Nevis and St. Kitts that you cannot do 2 jobs at the same time. That's what I wanted to get at.
Ma'am, wait, Paula, could I ask you a question?
Yes.
If I were to manage this radio station, that's 1 job?
Yes, it is.
Okay. If I were to manage some rental properties, that's another job?
Yes, but you cannot do
No, work with me. Work with me. Work with me. So that's a different job?
It's 2 jobs you have there, but you can't do them together.
Just work with me. So if I were to manage a radio station,
you can't do them in the same 24-hour time unless you focus on one within an 8-hour, 6-hour period and one in the other period, another 6 hours. If you do the 2 of them within the same time, then somebody is being cheated out of what? The time that you're supposed to give to them.
So I could speak now?
Certainly.
Okay. So if I decide now, if I get a job to manage the Housing and Land Corporation in the NIA, that's 1 job?
It is.
If in addition to that they give me a job to manage the Public Works Department, is that another job?
Mr. Herbert, do not try to confuse me.
I'm just work with me. Work with me. Is that a separate job?
No, but listen to me. You are working for the Nevis Island administration between those 2 things. You can't move off of Nevis Island administration job at 1 o'clock and go and do your rental property job between 1 to 6 or 1 to 4 while you're still supposed to be doing Nevis Island administration work.
So I could talk now?
Yes, you can talk.
Okay. So if I am working at the Bank of Nevis and I'm an accountant there, that's 1 job?
It is.
And I'm the manager of the board of directors for the Bank of Nevis, that's 1 job?
The board of directors meet at specific times.
No, work with me.
Going to work every day like the manager.
No, I didn't ask you. I just asked you if it is a job.
It's another position.
No, but
the organization, but it is not a full-time job, and you are trying to tie me up. But I'm going to stick to my point and say that what Mr. Brand said about Mr. Big.
Yeah, but I wasn't speaking about Mr. Brand.
Well, I am telling you that my point is to say that they cannot work in Nevis Island Administration, 8 to 4, Monday to Friday, and still be working in St. Kitts in the federal government, 8 to 4, Monday to Friday, and they are doing an effective job. That is not correct. They can only be in one place at one time, doing one exactly, fulfilling one function or working in one ministry. How many of our ministries? It is unfair to the people, and I don't care what anybody say. It is not fair. When people work at Four Seasons, when Mr. Brantley have a law firm, people go to work in his law firm 8 to 4, maybe secretaries, and then they pick up a job at Four Seasons, right? As a waitress, they go down there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. When they finish at 4, between there they have an hour to get to that next job. That is how you can have two jobs and be effective in both of them, because you're doing them at different times. This thing is not fair to people, right? Some people have to work too hard, even in these two jobs, and still can't make ends meet, right? Or get things done properly. So they must stop telling people that Brantley, Jeffers, and Evelyn can work these two jobs, and they're effective at them, right? And get the 2 pay for them. What they needed to do is to decide which pay they want, not to take the two of them, because it's not fair to the federation, the citizens of this federation.
I could say something?
Yes, you can.
You said that it is not fair for them to work these two jobs and so on.
I didn't say that. I say it's not fair for them to collect.
It's not fair.
Because they cannot be in any one place at the same time.
Right.
I mean, it's in two places, sorry. Only one place they can be in, because only one person, one individual.
Right. So you think it was fair for me to allow you to speak uninterrupted?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Stanley.
If she understands the term multitasking, she's gone, apparently.
Yeah, sometimes you see, Mr. Stanley, when you reach a stage where you're in a debate and you hear somebody says, they don't care what anybody says. This is what I will believe. I don't care what nobody says. It is time to take another call. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes. I would say this. It's honest. If people have a job and they can't make ends meet, then they go and get another job to make ends meet. But if you go and steal, it's not right. Honesty is what's supposed to go. If you cannot make ends meet in one job, you have another job. Yeah. Okay, that is right.
Okay, thank you. You know, this thing, we discussed this topic years and years and years. And you know, this thing stem from, you remember that those persons were not supposed to run for the 2 seats. You notice we hear an amendment to it now. You remember we have a lot of tapes with debates of who used to get double salary and so on and so forth. To tell the truth, right? I don't even really want to spend a lot of time on it, because in the fullness of time.
Yes, good evening, Webbo. Good evening, good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
Could you speak much louder? Caller, could you speak much louder?
Good evening, good evening.
Good evening.
I would like to speak, I would like to big up Patricia and tell her, I mean, Miss allergic to be victorious, and Mr. Webbo, I'm saying that you are just trying to impress Mark Brantley. You're my respect.
Yeah, okay. This Mark Brantley is a powerful fella, you know. Even when he's not a part of the debate, they just bring his name in. Edric, I interrupted you.
Multitasking. It is as simple as that. Multitasking. Whether it is for one nation or it is for 2 entities, it is multitasking. And anybody who's not familiar with the term, let them again look in the dictionary and see the meaning of multitasking. You can do a multitude of tasks if you have the capacity.
Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hello, good evening. I voted for Uriel Swanston, and he still went to think it and was in the federal house down there.
So, if one has the capacity to do multitasking by being an accountant, being a manager within the same firm, within the same nation, what is wrong with that? But people will eventually find an issue and try to guide people to come along with them. And they can make a forceful argument, but it doesn't mean that they're right. And I'm saying to you, not to you, Webbo, but to the listening audience, that if a person has the capacity to be the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Communication and Works, you're doing several jobs at the same time, but it takes capacity to do those three tasks that are assigned to you for the same nation. So how could it be? Simply because 2 paychecks are cut and you're able to define them as 2 pay? You are saying you should have the ability to do only one job. But beyond that, God has given people a multitude of talents, and as a result, they're capable of multitasking.
I think the issue goes beyond the ability to multitask, because if you were to apply the measure, any woman could multitask much more so than a man. But that is not the issue, whether or not people could multitask. The question that I think that is a very relevant question is whether or not one could perform the duties assigned to them within the same period of time and be fair. You cannot be fairly serving the people in Nevis when they're paying you from 8 to 4 while you're in St. Kitts serving from 8 to 4. And that is a fundamental question. It cannot apply either to the person who is on the government's payroll, getting paid, not working, and has a job, and that happens. So what I think that this is setting up is for us to be normalizing corrupt practices, because that is a corrupt practice. You cannot, and I insist, you cannot serve 2 masters at the same time. That was started me. You cannot serve 2 masters at the same time. You cannot be in St. Kitts and Nevis at the same time serving 8 hours. You're telling me it's a corrupt practice.
The call comes in.
It is a corrupt practice.
Here's what. You see, I don't want to go any further with that. You know why? Because we were discussing with a caller a little while ago. And then when I started to ask certain questions, the first thing they started to accuse you now of trying to tie you up. Let's leave that conversation for now. Maybe we'll get back to it some other time, because if I put certain information, evidence on the table, and somebody's going to say that I should not have done it, right? So let's leave.
I have just one last short comment to make.
Okay, go ahead.
If you are the premier and you're in St. Kitts and a call that is germane to Nevis, are you going to receive or say, I am in St. Kitts and therefore I cannot take the call simply because I'm supposed to take this call while I'm in Nevis? And vice versa. The positions are there, and based on the person who is carrying out those two assignments can be in either place, but he doesn't reject a call that is germane to a specific place. If you're in St. Kitts, then the call has to come from St. Kitts, and it has to do with St. Kitts' business, and therefore you can't accept a call regarding anything associated with Nevis while you're in St. Kitts. Fundamentally, I think where the rub comes is the fact that two salaries are paid, but let's assume that they're coupled together and they're issued from one financial system. Would you see a difference?
No.
Well, you know, I have some very good friends in the NRP, and I sent a note to one of them and asked them for some information. And I have been told, Webbo, that I think that the NRP is going to find themselves between a rock and a hard place over the next few weeks and months. And as Dr. Bartlett indicated, they may have to amend their constitution again, because at their convention some time ago they would have saw 5 resolutions being adopted, 1 from each local constituency, and 4 amendments were made to the party's 1970 constitution. One of those amendments, Webbo, dealt with section 7 of the NRP constitution, and that section dealt with constituency division and the selection of candidates. The amendment had 2 parts. First, it prohibits the selection of candidates to serve both the federal parliament and the Nevis Island administration. And second, it prohibits any candidate currently serving in either the federal parliament or the Nevis Island Assembly from also being selected to serve as a candidate in the other. The effect is that the NRP will field 1 set of candidates for the local elections and altogether different set of candidates for the federal, removing the possibility of any NRP politician being a member of the Nevis Island Assembly and still serving in the federal parliament. And they will have to deal with that issue. But I go back to what I said earlier, that the CCM position has been that we intend to field the best candidate that we feel would be able to capture the seat for the people of Nevis.
Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, thank you.
Yeah, this is, I just wanted to say, I never heard this situation of double salary discussed when NAPI was in power. I don't understand why it is now that the CCM is in power that is a big problem, and it's a debate about it. When the NAPI government was in power, they never discussed about double salary. And I'd like you to take that up with your panel.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Maybe it wasn't discussed because it wasn't an issue. Maybe you didn't have people who were taking 2 salaries.
You had somebody.
I don't know who.
You had the legal advisor in Mr. Nisbet, and he was a part of the federal government, so he was there doing 2 jobs.
No. Yes, I'm asking did anyone get 2 salaries? That is the question.
Did anyone get 2 salaries?
Yes. Yeah, that is the question that the caller asked about. And I said, I don't know of anyone who would have taken 2 salaries during that period of time, so it was a non-issue then. Well, it's important that I'm glad that Mr. Stanley didn't come with the Constitution, but you obviously had it, and I did say that we were in some peculiar circumstances and we had to make modifications, and we are quite prepared to make the adjustments in our Constitution if it gets to that point. Right now it is a non-issue for us anyway, because only one individual, and that individual is not now seeking to be a federal candidate. So I don't even know what it is you think you have, and of course you're always reading things and think that you know English and sometimes just miss the point. Like last week when you decided that, like last week when the Premier thought that, we couldn't take the federal government to court because, he mix up thinking that 114 is subsection of 112. But it is, in your interpretation, and sometimes I think some people are deliberately, misinterpreting things. But we said that, these are not normal circumstances for us. Everyone knows that we were not expecting an election, a federal election this year. Everybody expected a federal election 3 years out. Who is going to vote in a government and in 2 years' time they want to come back to the people? Because they cannot work out their differences, and that's why we're at this juncture. We're not prepared for it, and we've said that we were not prepared for that. But we have to adjust. You're going to try to hold that against us because we're trying to adjust? It has nothing to do with our integrity. It has nothing. It has to do with the circumstances, and people ought to understand that. Because the guy who called earlier and talked about integrity in public life, it is true that it is there, but it has not been operationalized to the extent that we are holding our public officials accountable, because there are things that are happening and visions talk about it. That is something that is on the street, the kind of things that are happening in government, and they're not being investigated. I'm like, what do you need? But when you have people who are in positions sometimes who are conflicted, that is what the issue is.
Good
so
evening.
We never get the kind of redress we need.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert.
Yes.
Good evening, sir. Good evening to your panel as well.
Good evening.
I hope everyone is having a good time tonight. Okay, I'm going to put my 2 cents in on the double salary. Just for a brief second. When it came up in an election, I take it to my own self because I love my politics. I'm passionate about my island, Nevis. Let me make it clear, Nevis. For me, Nevis is first. And I went over to think it myself and asked the first Prime Minister of this Federation if Sir Simeon Daniel ever take 2 salary. He said Simeon Daniel take 1 salary, and his salary was a Nevis salary. Simeon, our first Premier, our first national hero of Nevis, they have never taken 2 salaries. Never once. And with the Honorable Patrice Nisbet, when he was the legal advisor in Nevis, when he was called to go to Sinkit, he resigned. He'd never take 2 salary from Nevis. From Nevis and 1 salary. He have never had 2 salary. So I'm saying to Mr. Brand, please, Mr. Brand, he's a minister of government. He's a minister of government, lad man. And you are in the church, you're an Anglican, you say he's a Christian.
Let me ask you a question. Hold on a minute.
Yes.
You have any refutable evidence to say that Mr. Nisbet did not take 2 salaries? No. Answer the question. You have.
I just said it to you. I just said it to you.
You said what you said, but I am asking you if you have any irrefutable evidence.
Let me do this. Hello, what caller? Let me do this. You went to St. Kitts, you said. Work with me. And you wanted to know, because you love Nevis and you wanted to get the facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you went to St. Kitts and you asked the question of the person who should know.
Yes.
And they told you.
Mr. Daniel never take 2
Right. Well, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Did they give you any factual evidence, for instance, in writing?
I didn't get anything in writing.
Work with me. Work with me. No, work with me. They didn't give you anything in writing. They just told you that.
Yes.
Okay, right. I think that's what Mr. Brand, that's what you were trying to find out. Okay, right.
Tell Mr. Brand, Mr. Brand, come on, you're Minister of Government, please, don't go down that road. Do not go down that road, Mr. Brand.
What road I'm going down, caller? I'm asking you a very simple question. Do you have any irrefutable evidence to substantiate what you're talking about?
Callers,
salary, it comes from this PCM administration. Nobody ever done it. Just speak the truth.
Yeah, caller. This is what we will do, though. Listen, work with me. For years and years and years, I tried to listen to somebody while I'm talking, and I can't get it work. So what I try to do is one person speak at a time. Caller, you still there?
I am here.
Okay, would you like to finish up your point and then Mr. Brand will speak?
What I'm saying,
I want to speak.
What I'm saying is that we have to speak truth, because if we continue to speak lie, it's not going to get us nowhere. Let's speak the truth and then we try to solve the problem going forward. I am just saying that the only administration in this that ever done it is the system administration, and that's only the truth.
Okay,
that's only the truth.
Okay.
Have a wonderful evening.
Okay, hello. Right, so you've made your point. Give Mr. Brand a chance. Mr. Brand, go ahead.
Is one question I'm asking the caller, where is his evidence of the stuff that he's talking about? That is all I'm asking him.
Okay, Mr. Brand.
I'm listening.
Do you have any evidence that Patchy said too?
Caller, I am asking you. You put the matter on the table.
I do not have any evidence.
You do not have any evidence.
No, we have no evidence.
Well, I would suggest to you then, caller, that you leave it alone.
When Patchy was the legal advisor in the Nevis Island administration, when he got the job,
caller, take my foolish advice and leave it alone.
I asked you for evidence.
Take my foolish advice, caller, and leave it alone.
Okay, so let's leave it there.
Let me just ask this caller.
Let's leave it there. Let's leave it there. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hey, Mr. Webber.
Yes.
What were you saying? Patrice was getting 2 pay. Election in Navy. He won he won for NRP in the Chairman, not really Chairman, he resigned from the party. Sim Daniel was the minister. Sim Daniel used to get. So tell he, I could show but to be and show. He a tell lies. People are tell lies. He a telling lies.
Okay.
Used to get 2 pay.
Okay.
All right.
Let me present a fact. Does everybody agree that this same issue, they have run about 3 or 4 elections in it? Does everybody agree with that? That this issue
yes,
was presented, and then the same results ended in terms of the poll?
Right.
Okay, so in terms of that, what does the electorate say about it?
They don't care.
But this is how we care.
Well, let me just
Good evening, thank you for holding. Good evening, you're on the air. Good evening, you're on the air. Okay, caller, please call back. Yes, Mr. Stanley.
The Honorable Joseph Parry was a member of the NRP, and he was a member of the federal cabinet also, and he was a member of the Nevis Island administration under the Sim Daniel government. Honorable Ewell Swanston was also a member of the Nevis Island government, and was also a federal minister. Both of them got double salary.
Good evening, thank you for holding. Okay, please, caller, please try again.
Let me stop it. Just stop it. Let me say this. Stop it. The seat for Mr. I can't remember the seat that of the person, the ministry, but Joseph Parry became the Minister of Tourism
In the federal government.
in the federal government.
Yes.
And he collected a salary from St. Kitts for that ministry. And he was also a minister in the Nevis Island administration. Was he Minister of Agriculture, was he? And he collected a salary from Nevis. So, those who...
This is Thought That Get Results. Edric W. Stanley, the Honorable Spencer Brand, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Your phone calls on 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Be back after these.
With all the power from the tower, this is the powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, VON Radio, from the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis.
Builder's Paradise is offering a large variety of floor and wall tiles at very competitive prices. Builder's Paradise has over 2 million pieces in stock, lots of different styles to choose from. Whether you're renovating or tiling a new house, Builder's Paradise has what you need. Wow! Oh, and remember, we're open all day Saturday to serve you better. This is something that you can't refuse. Visit Builder's Paradise today at the C.A. Paul Southwell Industrial Site in St. Kitts or call them at 466-4938.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results. Good evening, thank you for holding.
Mr. Herbert, good night.
Yes.
Good night to the panelists and to the listening public. Mr. Brand, I noticed that the question came up as to doing 2 jobs at the same time. And you sought to answer the question by saying that Mr. Brantley has done a very good job at Foreign Affairs in St. Kitts. But you did not say anything about what he has done in Nevis. I find that to be very instructive. I find that you made mention of one of the job, but you did not say anything about the other one. And I find that to be instructive. I wonder why you didn't say anything about the other one.
Well, I was just giving an example. You know, I didn't necessarily were trying to outline every single point by point. I was just trying to give an example of him.
All right, I'll leave it. But I just found it instructive because somebody was talking about doing 2 jobs at the same time, and you sought to answer the person, but you only made mention of one. Anyway, good night.
Well, let me just say this. It is alleged that Joseph Parry collected, but I'm advised that he didn't. So let me go on record by saying it's been alleged that he collected, and also you also answered.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, you're on the air, could you go ahead?
Evening, Mr. Webbo. I would just like to ask the 2 panel tonight. Good night to if there is any consultation with parties in St. Kitts to form the next government, that the political crisis such that no party is going to win an outright seat, and can they disclose which party interested in federal government?
Well, I can speak on behalf of NRP because I'm, a candidate. We have not formed any alliance with anyone. We would prefer not to do that before an election, before the polls are in, and then we would work with whomever in St. Kitts would command, the majority of the votes in St. Kitts, or the majority of the seats in St. Kitts, or if it is necessary for us to form a coalition. We don't have any enemies in St. Kitts, and we don't have any friends who really helping us, contrary to what has been said by the other side, that that Timothy's fielding or choosing our candidates and all kind of crazy allegations. So we at this point have not, Well, he wanted an answer from both, and I didn't want to be presumptuous. Just to point out that CCM has already said that they're in love with Pam.
Caller, our position is that our main goal, of course, is to ensure that we look for the best interest for the island of Nevis. It so happens that we have entered into an arrangement with 3 political parties in St. Kitts before, the PAM and the PLP. We are having some issues with one member of the political party, and 2 of that membership, so to speak, is still intact. And our position and our aim is that we want to see the best for Nevis, and that is what we expect after the election, that the people of Nevis would get their rightful share of what belongs to them, and that is our position. I don't see that needs to complicate the issue. It so happens that the federal government at the end of the day may include both political parties from Nevis and both political parties from St. Kitts if there is no clear victor on St. Kitts.
Good evening.
Our position is what's in the best interest for Nevis.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello.
Good evening. Good evening. You're on the air.
Yes, and everybody else on the panel there. Well, the lady, the guy there, a while ago, carry you, I'm bringing you. They know yesterday, meet it, Tell them Nevis no one think it's a would have one Nevis, and I don't tell them so the other day, and I shut down, Call out the man calling and tell them, oh, Nevis, so just look. I call them, and tell them it's them, we don't want to have you, we are, must want us. Because you all got the thing, the handle. Right? All I want, Mr. Webber, the government to do, whoever government go in with the health care in a mess. Both ways, they need to fix it up. I don't know for Nevis really, but I know for down here. And they need to come with some concrete thing. House is important, but health is much better. More health is more important. And we can't get them some fake promising. And when come to the ain't many nothing. Then Mr. right now, Mr. Webber, you hear all the thing, the egg are open and the chicken in it and the chicken like it dead and the next minute the chicken like the chicken alive because it's nonsense. If they go in the untable thing where like what that is saying Greenland Spark, where all these big people getting old, one another 60 over 60 kind of something. And I think when they need to come out with this dilly-dally, this whole badge and hoop and the story. You don't guess one thing in the meeting and when come to the coming and settling in the office, you're saying another. We too much lightning up to followers to go into them thing, you know. There was them long-term people who never say, okay, yes, yes. If Papa better say he make up to wear shoes. Them days gone. We don't know me want to pay shoes. Me just go and my phone go Amazon and order whatever style me want. And that is thing we can do. Get out to them, they give you more fake promising. So I'm saying it to comfort to a fool, you know.
Okay.
Oh. You need to get it more better man. I got the money, I'll show him going to put your blog, them long term thing and I blood even and go with it. So look at them still cotton. But I will come to know. A laughing stock.
Okay. Alright. I got you. 869-469-161-601-700. We got a few minutes left. If you get in, we ask you to, make your point forceful, but take a little time so we can accommodate as many folks as possible.
I just want to put on the table so that people could understand where we're going from here as it relates to NRP. This election for us is not going to be on double salary. This is an issue that I think was not raised by me. I have addressed it because I've been sitting here. And it definitely is not going to be about fair share either. We have a proposal that we would have made, we have been hearing, we are waiting for responses. we realize that the other side has suggested that maybe they're not either willing to do the hard work to get it done, but we are proposing that we're going to try to amend the constitution in order to be able to treat with the issue of the non-tax revenue, particularly CBI. So fair share is a non-issue for us going, except that we have a plan how we would get the fair share for the people of Nevis. So not going to be just on fair share, it's going to be on other issues related to the things that are affecting the lives and the livelihoods of the people in Nevis in particular.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Good evening, Mr. Herbert, and good evening to the rest of the panelists. Now, a direct question was asked of Mr. Brand and Dr. Patricia Bartlett, and Dr. Bartlett gave a direct answer. Mr. Brand has not gave a direct answer as to a position. The question was, is there a position for them to align themselves with any party in Sinkit? His answer around the question.
Caller, you obviously wasn't listening to me.
Yes, I did listen.
Okay, but why don't we do this? Mr. Brand, is your party...
I said that we have entered into an agreement with 3 political parties on Sinkit. One of those political parties we are having an issue with. The other political parties, we still have that arrangement. I thought I was clear. And I also said that we
are still intact.
Caller, work with me. I'll let you speak. Okay. Work with me. Let Mr. Brand speak, and then I'll let you speak. Go ahead, Mr. Brand.
Caller, I indicated that we have entered into an arrangement with 2 political parties on Sinkit. We are having some issues with one of those political parties, and we are still in an arrangement with the other political party. I also went on to state that our position is that after this federal election, our position will always be what is in the best interest of the island of Nevis. I said that. I don't know if I need to be much more clear than that.
Caller, go ahead.
Okay. You did say that.
That's what I said.
But you went on to further state that the next government might form with both parties from Nevis and both parties from Sinkit. I mean, there are 3 parties in Sinkit, that's one. And then, how can you be speaking for the next party in Nevis? What parties in Nevis might form the next government? I mean,
Caller, I said that the federal government may be formed and may be able to form with both parties from Sinkit and both parties from Nevis. Because I am not seeing any clear victor anywhere.
Okay, now caller, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Brand.
Yes, sir.
If you haven't seen a clear victor nowhere, how is it on the campaign trail at the launch? You, Mr. Brand, said that the next federal government can be formed with TCM and the People's Action Movement from Sinkit. You, Mr. Brand, said it. And then speakers after you came and said the very same thing. So how is it that we're working to the other parties then in Sinkit and Nevis?
Caller, let me ask you a question. How many seats does it takes to form the federal government?
It should take 6.
Exactly.
But the federal government has formed with 5 parties before, 5 seats before.
But caller, I want you to stay with me for a moment.
Am I not right that the federal government was formed with 5 seats before?
And but by the way, it's formed with 3 now.
Well,
that's not true.
That is true.
Huh?
That is true.
And who knows? Maybe in sometime in the future it might be formed with 1.
Oh Lord.
So the point is 1.
The point is that it doesn't take 6 seats to actually form the government.
Right. So it can take 5.
It can take 5.
It can take 3.
It can take 3.
And it can take 1.
Exactly.
So your point is 1.
That is not my point now.
What?
Mr. Brand,
okay, work with me. So Mr. Brand's point is what then?
Null and void.
So he doesn't have a point. Okay.
I'll listen.
No, don't go yet.
That's okay. No, you may not want to go, but I gotta go. Good evening. Thank you for holding. Caller, please. Let's see. You can dial again. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for holding. You have half a minute.
Mr. Brand?
Yes, dear.
I was at the launch at Caribbean Cove.
Yes.
And heard you say that the next government will be formed with CCM and PAM. So how is it now that you're saying something? That's a clear and distinct statement. You're saying that when you said that you did not mean it?
Caller, I want you to listen to me very carefully.
Mr. Brother,
Caller. Well, listen, we don't have a lot of time. No. Mr. Brand, say what you
Webbo, I want you to bear with me 1 second. I was trying to get the caller before to understand how much seats it takes to form the federal government. To get a proper government intact and in place, you would need a minimum of 6 seats. We are saying that we expect on St. that our partner on St. PAM would get at least 3 seats, and we expect on the island of Nevis that the CCM would get 3 seats. That is 6 seats that will form the federal government. I did not make any statement that was inaccurate. Caller.
Okay. Caller. Wait. Caller. Caller. You know, one of the things that I would encourage people, and I said it, I understand the passion, you know, and all that, but we won't get anywhere if we just keep shouting at each other, right? I mean, this is the gospel truth. I've tried many a year to try to see whether or not I can listen, let's say, Dr. Bartlett, while I keep talking, and it wouldn't work, right? Let's listen to each other. You talk, I talk, and it works that way. Everybody keeps shouting, it will be something that get no result. Anyway, this program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us this evening. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
Views and opinions expressed on the preceding program are solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers. With all the power from